Explain the reasons why some women won the vote in 1918. 1. Women's war work. The suffragettes changed the name of their newspaper from The Suffragette to Britannica, and they focused on patriotism rather than attempting to win the vote for the duration of the war. By the end of the war, around 60% of munitions workers were female and employed 700,000 women, known as munitionettes. They suffered appalling health complications, including toxic jaundice, which turned their skin yellow. Women's war work helped women to win the vote because the work that women did, especially in munitions, was of major national importance and suggests the reward theory, that women were given the vote as a reward. There was The Nation Thanks the Women billboards and newspapers called women heroines, which could be considered evidence that women were given the vote as a reward. However, women's war work was limited in helping women win the vote because only middle-class women over 30 were given the vote in 1918. This contradicts the idea that women were given the vote as a reward, especially as the majority of munitionettes who risked their lives were under 30 and working class. The women who were given the vote were respectable, aged over 30, and who were property owners. 2 were militant suffragettes. They heckled MPs, and it progressed to smashing windows of important buildings such as 10 Downing Street, poured acid into letterboxes, and attempted to burn down buildings such as Lushar railway station. Emily Davison attempted to attach a suffragette banner to the King's Horse at the 1913 Epsom Derby. However, she misjudged her attempt and was trampled by the horse, later dying from her injuries. This made front-page newspapers. This helped to win the vote as the suffragettes succeeded in their aim of publicity. They regularly made national headlines, were talked about in Parliament, and were almost unavoidable through their violent methods. They prevented the government and society from ignoring the growing demand for gender equality in voting rights. However, they were limited in helping to win the vote as the suffragettes held back progress because they reinforced the idea that women were irresponsible and unable to cope with responsibility. The death of Emily Davison reinforced this idea for many of the public, and MPs were furious at the law-breaking campaign and changed their mind about giving women the vote. 3. Changing attitudes. Girton College, Cambridge University, a female-only college, was opened in 1870 and was the UK's first offering university-level education for women, although they weren't allowed to graduate. The 1902 Education Act helped to create an explosion in the number of girls' grammar schools. There were 99 girls' secondary schools in England in 1904, but by 1914 this number had risen to 349. Changing attitudes helped women win the vote because having access to better education disproved the misconception that women were incapable of understanding complex political issues. Furthermore, better educated women were less likely to accept being treated as second-class citizens and began to demand a say in the running of their country. However, changing attitudes was limited in helping women winning the vote because state schools, where the majority of working-class girls attended, often emphasized domestication. This suggests the idea of women not being involved politically, as men viewed their education for the home as domestic mothers. In 1878, domestic economy became a compulsory subject for girls, but not boys. 4. Suffragists. The suffragists organized petitions and distributed pamphlets. In the 1910 election, petitions with over 280,000 signatures was presented to the House of Commons, representing the popularity of female voting from both men and women. In 1907, over 3,000 women marched from Hyde Park to Exeter Hall in the rain and mud. It later became known as the Mud March, due to the torrential rain and muddy skirts of the protesters. The suffragists were important in helping some women to gain the vote because they were successful in winning the support and respect of many important MPs, such as future PM David Lloyd George. In 1910, 1911 and 1912, Parliament heard arguments from suffragist-friendly MPs, showing the support they had in Parliament. Moreover, the suffragists impressed many British people and showed that they were intelligent, capable and trustworthy. However, they were limited in helping to win the vote, as the suffragist campaign was cautious, slow-moving, and was ignored by politicians, which never gained the publicity of the suffragettes. Suffrage societies began in 1866, and they had no voting rights for over 50 years. The fact that the suffragettes was founded because of this slow progress is evidence of the possible lack of impact they had. 5. Progress of other countries. New Zealand granted women the vote in 1893, Australia in 1902, and some parts of Canada in 1916. Lady Anna Stout, a suffragist from New Zealand, wrote letters to anti-suffragist groups explaining that granting the vote to women in New Zealand had been a success. The examples from other countries helped women to win the vote because seeing that campaigns abroad could be successful convinced women in Britain to carry on campaigning. The fact that women had the vote abroad, particularly in colonies like New Zealand, may have added pressure to politicians and renewed enthusiasm to the suffrage campaigns. However, examples from other countries was limited in helping women win the vote because there is no evidence that foreign progress was discussed by MPs in Parliament. Moreover, it was likely that between 1914 and 1918, British politicians were far more concerned with the war effort on the Western Front than being worried that they were not seen as democratic.